And call this meeting to order. I'd first like to start with a moment of silence for those that have passed since the last meeting. All right, thank you. All right, the first order of business is to approve the November 18th minutes.
You on the phone? Yeah, just about. Hello?
Hello, Senator. The meeting was just called to order. Do we have any other board members online or on the phone? Senator, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Any other board members? All right. Right now then, Senator, you're the only board member that we have online, and there are 6 board members present. The first order of business is the approval of the November 18th minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the November 18th minutes.
Do we have a second? All in favor? None in favor? All right. Minutes are approved.
Next up on the agenda is the disaster response coverage. This is an item that the board has talked about several times this year. At your last meeting, you made a motion to move forward with a proposal for a final proposal this month. The bill language associated with that proposal is in your materials. And then here to speak to the topic is Ryan Frost.
Thanks, Steve. Mr. Chair, members of the board, for the record, Ryan Frost, research staff. So again, the issue here is that Left Plan 2 members who are called up to federal service to respond to natural disasters receive reduced non-duty death and disability benefits from Left Plan 2 if they are killed or disabled in the course of that service. And the summary of this final proposal is to provide Left Plan 2 members who are called up into eligible federal service to respond to natural disasters or other federal emergencies with similar benefit protections provided to members of the National Guard or military reserves who are called up during a time of war. I think a key distinction is to understand what exactly eligible federal service means, and that means that a member who left the employ of an employer to enter the uniformed services of the United States or FEMA or the National Disaster Medical System of the United States Department of Health and Human Services to perform service in response to a disaster, major emergency, special event, federal exercise, or official training. Now, to get into a little bit of the bill details, there's really 2 different benefit sections. The first section deals with service credit, and what that does is provides the survivor of a member who is killed with service, or provides a survivor of a member who is killed with service credit at no cost for the period of service up until the member's death, and provides a member who is disabled with service credit at no cost for the period of service up until the member's separation from that service. And the second benefit, it has to do with an unreduced annuity, and what that does is provides the survivor retirement benefits, which are not actuarially reduced for the survivor of a member who is killed while providing eligible federal service on or after March 22nd, 2014, which was the date of the Oso mudslide. It also provides disability retirements benefits, which are not actuarially reduced for a member who is killed while providing eligible federal service on or after the date of the Oso mudslide. So with that, there's 2 options in front of you today. One is to vote to submit the bill draft provided to the legislature, and the second option would be to take no further action. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Did somebody just join us on the phone conference? Okay.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion. Number one.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Yeah, any discussion points? Yes, sir.
So I was wondering just,
Hi, this is Kevin.
go ahead.
Hello, Representative Vandeweghe. The board is discussing the disaster response coverage topic. Ryan just finished his presentation, and there was a motion to submit the bill draft to the legislature, and discussion on that motion has just opened up, but there hasn't been any yet.
So I was just wondering, Mr. Nelson, is that when we had had a conversation about this, was wondering if more than just left two members were thought about in expanding this type of coverage and trying to find out what exactly has happened in the other systems around the state.
In this bill applies only to left two. That was the motion or the direction of the board at the November meeting. The Select Committee on Pension Policy has been studying this issue with respect to the other plans. My understanding is that there were members of the State Patrol Plan, members of PERS, and members of the Public Safety Employees Plans that were activated during the most recent wildfires. And so the issue certainly applies to other plans besides left two. There wasn't a hard data in terms of how many members in those other plans were affected. The Select Committee considered it, and it was they made a motion at their November meeting to bring it back to December, but at their December meeting there was no discussion on that topic at all. If there will not be any coordination with the Select Committee on this topic for this session, if the board decides to move the issue forward, it would be a left two board bill only and would apply to left two members only.
Any other questions?
Do we have a note on this?
A fiscal note was requested by the State Actuary's Office. At this time, they didn't have enough data to complete that fiscal note, but they are available here to answer questions. Lisa Wan is here from the Actuary's Office. If you've got something that you'd like to ask her.
Fair enough. Ms. Wan, can you address that? Oh, please.
Good morning. Lisa Wan with the State Actuary's Office. No, we have not prepared a fiscal note at this point, but I would expect that we would not have data to put a definitive cost on the bill. Obviously, there would be a cost because it's expanding benefits. I expect what we could do in a fiscal note, it would be indeterminate without data to be able to determine how many incidents might occur, but we could do examples in the fiscal note to give it an idea of the type of cost and what it would take to impact contribution rates. But I expect the fiscal note would be indeterminate.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tolling?
Again, I always feel like an amateur or layperson asking you questions about this, and sometimes they might not come across well. If you did something to look backwards, say like a linear regression analysis, for example, and you looked at all the possible different injuries or situations that could have occurred that might have been covered previous to this, is there anything out there at all on the map, or are you telling us it would be indeterminate because they don't exist at this point? We don't find anything that would meet this criteria.
I think it would be, we have talked to Left 2 staff regarding data, and they're not aware of the number of Left 2 members who have been called to any of these prior situations that would be covered under this bill. So we don't have data on how many people are being called and for how long, and then for us to predict how many events might occur in the future is very difficult in this arena.
And so you wouldn't expect that this would have an impact on rates?
What would happen is we'd end up, I expect, preparing an indeterminate fiscal note, which would mean there would not be a supplemental contribution rate impact because it's indeterminate. We can't determine what the cost would be. And then we would just provide examples in the fiscal note just to give you a sense as a board to, how much would it take for it to impact rates. Because, we also don't know what age group is getting called up. Is it the average Left 2 member? Is it the younger Left 2 members that are getting called up? So without data like that, it's very difficult to put a dollar on the expected costs for providing these additional benefits. So there would not be a supplemental rate. So what would happen is if this bill passed and if situations happened in the future where additional benefits were paid, it would just get absorbed into the plan at the time that happened.
Understood. Question for Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
With SCPP, do you feel that they didn't do this for a reason? Did they just back off and we're taking the point on this? Is this going to happen with them? Or your sense, just kind of an analysis?
I could only speculate, and it would not be appropriate to do that on the record.
Understood.
But no, it
There's
was
no
it was
express
unexpected. The action by the committee yesterday didn't match up with the motion on November, so I'm not exactly sure where what happened there.
Understood. Thank you.
This is Judy. I wonder if, because I don't know why they wouldn't have taken action yesterday either, but I wonder if a bill should be proposed for the sake of discussion, for the sake of at least researching a little bit more into the fiscal aspect of it. I know it's difficult to predict from what Lisa is saying, but should we do it just to get the discussion going? I guess that question wasn't to anybody in particular.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, this one is I think it's an interesting idea. It just came to us from the recent fires. It does need a lot more work before. It doesn't seem like we have the data. It doesn't sound like we have all our partners together on this. And from the legislative side, is it better to propose a half-baked idea to the legislature and they can figure it out? Or is it better for us to take the time during the legislative session this next time and work for it for the next year to get something that meets more of our needs? There was a lot of other questions we had that brought up about the people who do move out of, these are Left 2 employees who on their own volition choose to enter other types of service. And the question, we've identified three services: uniformed, FEMA, National Disaster Medical System. I'm not sure why just those three were listed when we had this conversation. I think there were possible more programs or ideas out there that people could be covered under. And also a question about, we've created this thing for disasters. Right now, they are covered if they are called up for uniform service in a time of war. If they're called up for uniform service that doesn't meet that definition, they're not covered, is what I'm hearing. And so I'm trying to find out, there's a lot of holes and a lot of gaps in this. The idea is, I believe, the intention is we want to make sure that those who respond to disasters have full coverage. And we did find out that those who do respond are covered by, if you're a uniformed personnel, you do get coverage. It may not be as robust as a Left 2 member directly. And so those kind of conversations, I think we've just begun and kind of scratched the surface on those ideas, but I don't think that we have it ready for bill language. And so I think that, in my experience, it's better to take that time, talk with the legislators, talk with our constituents, and come up with a more full plan before we bring a bill, actual writing a bill, to the legislature. So that's what I'm going to be supporting.
Mr. White?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I certainly understand your concerns, I'd hate to, as we're looking to this upcoming year with, as we see continued wildfires, expansion of, and having issues there, I would hate to not have people covered who have the potential to be covered. And, so I think while, there still are a lot of questions with this stuff, as Senator Warnock mentioned, we can fine tune this during the legislative session, try and address some of those issues. And, not only that, but Left 2 has been the leader of a lot of these measures. I think back to the past couple sessions with the new retiree annuity purchase that the Left 2 board did initially, and then the other pension plans, across the state jumped on board, and it's because we set that model. So I'm going to be in favor of it to make sure that we have a benefit in place.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Representative Hawley.
David, I have some hesitancy for the same reason you do, but on the other hand, if we have absolutely no past history whatsoever of people that would qualify for this, the potential for cost on something like this seems to almost be infinitesimal. So if you had a non-determinate note out there, we're not talking about walking into something where it's going to cost, but we don't know how much it's going to cost. I'd rather, and Mike, you make a really good point. I mean, I'd rather have something like this in place for members of the system out there that do involuntarily get called up in these situations, rather than put them in a disadvantage just by mere nature of the disaster they're addressing. And this is not something that you put in place that you can't change 50 minutes down the road if we see that we made a mess. But I'd love to have the coverage in place for our members, representing the members. That this seems to be more of a it's not a high risk situation to move something like this to the legislature here if we can't even show that there has been a past history of cost on this. And in the future, the one guy that gets left out, this might be his world. So.
Thank you, Representative.
And just the last, and I appreciate, this is why we are together as a board, and I really appreciate the conversation. And Senator, thanks for weighing in on the phone. We appreciate all that input. There are kind of questions. One is, this continues to be the Left 2 taking a leadership role, where I'd rather lobby is that those who are called up for for disaster coverage, is they should provide good coverage for those who are responding to these disasters. It's not just the state of Washington. And why does it always fall on Left 2 board that we take our pension system and are solving other people's issues? Okay, I mean, this continues to be a reframe, is that we have a very robust, fiscally prudent Left 2 retirement system, and we continue to solve problems of other people's systems that they don't cover appropriately. And we can't keep coming to everyone else's rescue, when really the bottom line is that when people go out for disasters, they should get the coverage that they need. And Left 2 doesn't have to be the support system for all of those, when people take on these responsibilities. So good conversations. I'm sure we'll continue these conversations. Whatever happens, I'm sure that the legislatures will be talking about this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. And everyone's bringing up good points. One point I'd like to make is last session we had a gentleman here from that represented the Department of Defense, and he did clarify the different situations. There were 4 different situations where it called up, and what the level of coverages were and what they were not. And my understanding is we're not trying to make an over-encompassing bill to cover every situation, but merely cover those gaps where a member would not be covered.
Mr. Chair, if I can have the last word. Hopefully it's the last word.
Representative Hawley.
David, I mean, you speak in facts and figures out there, and you're always well-founded when you present. But this is one of those things that it almost goes back to the core of what's our mission statement. You know, what's our directive? Why are we here? And basically, it's to take care of left 2 members. It's just fiduciary for left 2 members. And I looked at this, and so many things all the way back to September 30th, 1977. You know, were other people's responsibilities. You know, we ended up at 58 with nothing out there, and you know, people that were literally propped up, you know, in a corner, you know, for years because they couldn't function. There's no medical retirement. There's things that we've done consistently, you know, over the last 40 years here to literally to cover for exactly the situation you have. So this is not a first impression. This is not a case without precedent. This is something that has a very small potential footprint here that we're following the same motif that we followed here since implementation of Left 2 and the lobbying long before the board here to provide those things out there to take care of our members. And I think this is a reasonable ability to do so.
Mr. Golnick?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I have a lot of the same concerns that David had, but going back to what Jeff says, we do have a responsibility here to take care of the left 2 members, and I think that the board being as aggressive as they have over the years has kind of led the way for a lot of legislation. It's probably good to get the conversation going. We do have our goal here is to take care of our left 2 members, so I was first inclined not to submit any legislation at this time, but I think I'm going to support this at this time because it is our mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Golnick. Any further discussion? Okay. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those not in favor?
Aye.
No.
Okay. Motion passes.
Steve, just so you know, I was a no on that bill.
Thank you, Wally. All right, the next item on the agenda is the final proposal on the retiree return to work issue. The board made a motion at the November meeting to bring this forward for a final proposal to discuss resubmitting the same proposal that had previously been submitted by the board. Here to give the staff presentation on this is Paul Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Paul Neal, and as Steve mentioned, I'm here to talk about the retiree return to work issue. At the last meeting, he did ask staff to come forward with a proposal, which we've done at this point for your consideration. This issue we've talked about a number of times, starting back in 2013. The tension is between career change legislation being used inappropriately to continue law enforcement and firefighter careers versus the tension of providing some kind of way for a legitimate, a legally sanctioned way for people to move to perhaps smaller, lower-paying jurisdictions after they've left a larger-paying jurisdiction. What the proposal that the board asked us to bring forward is to resubmit what was done in 2014, House Bill 2479, which addresses the current issue of prohibiting Left Plan 2 retirees from receiving their left pension if they're working in a position that would be eligible for LEOFF, except for the fact that it is either less than full-time or less than fully compensated, not fully commissioned, includes additional non-LEOFF duties, or the worker has been designated as an independent contractor. So basically, these are examples of things that DRS has seen being done in an effort to have people work following LEOFF retirement and what have traditionally been LEOFF-covered jobs. There is a fiscal note. What we did is we just used the fiscal note that the Actuary's Office prepared for 2479 in 2014 because it is the same proposal, and the cost is indeterminate. The discussion in the fiscal note talks about there's a possibility of some savings because perhaps people would work longer, would not, if they didn't have the ability to do this, they might not retire as early, but that's highly speculative and doesn't result in any real numbers, but that's kind of where the fiscal note is. So I guess the bottom line for this board at this time is that there's no cost anticipated. So the options are to either vote to submit this bill draft to the legislature for passage or take no further action at this time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, let's open up for discussion. Mr. White?
Question for you, Paul. I understand that a little bit over the last couple months we've found out about not necessarily it being typically a management issue, but we're also finding out more issues about kind of ground level, response firefighters, response officers. Do you have any further information on that?
No, I believe there was one example, and Steve, you can help me out on this. It was a second tier level management, not a chief, but I still don't think down as far as the level of actual, I guess what you call ground troops.
Don't have data on this, but the understanding is that there is, in addition to the chief issues that have been kind of brought up in the media in the past and that the board has talked about, and the second or lower level management positions, that there seems to be more retirees also being hired into those. I think, Mike, what you're talking about is there a growing use of volunteer firefighters or reserve police officers that are paid but also retired? And we don't have any data on that. I know that the Select Committee has been discussing that issue tangentially also this session, and it might be appropriate to have a presentation from the Board of Volunteer Firefighters. They also cover reserve police officers to see what types of data they might have regarding whether they're the use of paid part-time volunteers or reserve police officers.
Any further discussion? Mr. White?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move option 2 with the understanding that we'd explore this issue further during the next interim.
Is there a second? Okay, we have a second for take no further action.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Contrary to the last motion we had, I do think that this needs kind of further exploration and finding out what we need to know, what we don't know. But on this case, this is more of a restriction on our members and what they can do in retirement from LEOFF 2, as opposed to providing a benefit like the last motion did. So that's why my intent is to move option 2.
And I would agree to segue from what Mr. White said. I think we need some clarification on what we're talking from the bottom up, retired law enforcement that aren't necessarily taking top level jobs and bottom level jobs, and what that looks like, what those definitions are, and have a little more clarification so we have less loose ends and there's not so much of a gray area. It seems to be a very large gray area right now where there could be some unintended consequences, and we don't want to have any issues that we could see in the forefront and not have those, that would be advantageous. Anyone else? Okay, so I'll call for a vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Third item on the agenda is a final proposal of the retiree annuity purchase issue. At the earlier meeting of the Left Plan 2 board, the board asked that this proposal be brought forward for Left 2 only to provide a one-time window for members who were retired prior to the effective date of the annuity purchase proposal. The Select Committee on Pension Policy has been studying the issue for the other plans, and they voted at their meeting yesterday to move forward with a coordinated bill that would provide a similar window for state patrol retirees, as well as providing a option for retired Left 1 members and active Left 1 members to make the annuity purchase. So we'll be working with them to come up with one bill if the board approves moving forward with this issue. With that, I'll turn it over to Paul for the staff presentation on this topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, for the record, my name is Paul Neal, committee staff, and as Steve went through, we're talking about the retiree annuity purchase. Again, this is an idea that the board looked at a couple years ago, thought it was a really good idea for current members. Basically, what this ability that's in current law does is it allows retiring Left 2 members to leverage the infrastructure the legislature has already put in place and takes advantage of some recent changes in the tax code to allow them to purchase their annuity through the Left Plan 2 trust fund and end up getting a much better return on your annuity purchase than you would in the private sector, primarily because the Left 2 trust fund uses the assumed rate of interest of 7.5%, which is about 3.5% roughly higher than the interest rate that would be used if you were buying the annuity on the open market. So it's a pretty significant increase in how much bang you get for your buck when you convert, if you choose to convert your deferred savings into a annuity. The current law, though, is only written to address current members, and then after this happened, retirees who had already retired at the time the bill came into place thought that, they would like a chance to do this, that it was a really good idea, and they, it was just kind of an accident of timing that they didn't have the opportunity to do this. So what the board asked us to bring to you at this meeting is a bill that allows Left 2 retirees. As Steve mentioned, there's also some interest from State Patrol retirees and Left 1 retirees and actives, I imagine. And that's something that's being handled by the Select Committee on Pension Policy. So what this draft bill does is it provides a window for Left Plan 2 retirees to purchase that annuity. It's a one-time window, and part of the reason for that is if it were an ongoing thing, there'd be some anti-selection issues. If someone could just decide at any time to go ahead and do this, which could generate some costs. So there's a one-time window from January 1st to June 30th, 2016, which would be well after, if the bill were passed in the 2015 legislature, would be well after that. And the reason for that is to give DRS an opportunity to do some communication so that people know about this window while it's open. It's available to those who retired prior to October 1st, 2014, which is a little bit after the effective date of the 2014 law, but it was just to make sure that people that if someone who retired, say, in July or August and maybe wasn't up on the latest developments, give them that chance to take advantage of this. It's the same terms as the current law, which is you can purchase it. It gets paid by DRS in the same check. It would have the same survivor option that you would have selected for your underlying benefit. It would have the COLA built into it, so it has all those same features. There is a fiscal note in your materials on it. It is an indeterminate cost. It should be no cost because they're buying this at the actuarially equivalent rate. And as is always the case with anything where you're talking about things in the future, that cost estimate is based upon assumptions and if those assumptions turn out to be too conservative, then there could be a net gain, small net gain to the fund. If those turn out to be too liberal, too good, maybe that's a bad way to put those words together, then there could be a potential cost to the fund. But given the assumptions that we have in place there now, that particularly with the left two board, since we have the 7.5% interest rate return as opposed to, I believe, the 7.8, which is now in place for the other systems, that's a slightly lower risk. So with that, the options are to recommend the bill that we've included in your materials to the legislature or to take no further action at this time. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Open up for discussion.
I would move option number 1.
Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about the people in the sky.
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, Senator.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's open this up for discussion.
It's pretty self-explanatory, and if we have it all together, so I think you're right to go straight to the vote. But
Okay, so no discussion. Let's go ahead for the vote. I think we had one yes. I apologize. This is my first time here at the chair, so I'm learning. Bear with me.
all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Those opposed? All right, the motion passes.
Representative Vanderway, did you vote on that last proposal? Okay. Yeah. All right. The next item up on the agenda is the administrative update, and just a couple of quick items. One, I would like to let the board know that Dawn will no longer be serving the board as our Attorney General next year. At this point in time, the Attorney General's office is still deciding on a replacement for her. So once I know who that is, I'll introduce the new AG to you at the first meeting next interim. In the meantime, I'd like to personally thank Dawn for her service to the board. And is there anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to add that I didn't ask to be taken off of the board, and just very briefly, they're making some changes. Our division chief retired. They're making some changes in our office and moving some of our client agencies to other divisions, and so this board is being moved along with the SIB and DRS and some other related boards to another division than where I will be going. So it has been my pleasure to provide legal advice to all of you and to represent you. And I'm sorry, I wish the board were coming along with me, but the new attorney will be announced, I think, shortly via letter to Steve. So thank you.
I've already discussed the Select Committee on Pension Policies action or lack of action with respect to the issues that the board was potentially coordinating with them. The only other item for the administrative update has to do with outreach activities. There was a meeting of the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, which Tim attended, and there was a executive board meeting of the Washington State Council of Firefighters, who asked for a presentation from the Ombudsman, Tammy. And at this point in time, we've got 14 confirmed outreach activities on the calendar for next year. So and I'll update you on those as they occur next year. That concludes the administrative update, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to the 2016 meeting calendar.
There is in your materials, proposed meeting dates, which were discussed with the board at your last meeting. In the meantime, we did send out a survey to all the board members of preferences for recurring meeting dates. The preferred date was still Wednesday in general, but with that, the proposed calendar is in front of you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about any of the specific dates.
Okay, open up for discussion.
Just a conversation about scheduling. It sounds like trying to get 11 of us all in the same place at the same time continues to be a difficulty. So it looks like keeping that fourth Wednesday in general, working with Mr. Nelson and the staff, is that there will be some conflicts coming up. And so if we can identify those beforehand and set our dates so that we can all put our schedules out months ahead of time, that would be great. I think the dates in front of us, there was a few specific dates. Mr. Nelson, do you want to help us out on that? And just kind of in general, it's kind of useful also as I keep on going, what are those key dates that we have? And it's usually, the first quarter is the legislative session, and that we do via teleconference, and we don't really have a full member of the whole boards here. August, we tend to cancel. October, we try to do an off-site, and that it may or may not be that same day. The key dates really, we have about 6 or 7 dates that are key, and so trying to get the most of us participating in those dates is really what we're trying to work on, I think, and I agree with that. I think there was dates in September and December that Mr. Nelson was going to suggest to get more of us together because of conferences and overlapping other commitments.
Yes, in identifying potential conflicts with the fourth Wednesday and trying to find alternative dates where there weren't other conflicts and then where the boardroom was available, 2 dates came up as possibilities. The third Wednesday in September, which would be September 21st, and the first Wednesday in December, which would be December 7th, that those would be alternative dates, September 21st instead of September 28th, and December 7th instead of December 28th.
Mr. White?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd recommend we adopt the 2016 proposed meeting dates with the amendments that Steve just discussed.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
I did want to talk about those. That we did try to think about the 5th Wednesday of the month, but the chair reminded me that would just be 2 meetings a year, and I think that might be a little bit hard. And so it would be very long meetings. So.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Representative Hawley?
just an editorialized follow-up on this. Last year, we started the practice of having a call-in meeting or just more of a briefing during session as to the progress things happening. If we actually have to, would have to get together and take action on something that is unexpected. Would that be your intent to continue that, Mr. Nelson?
Yes. All of the board meetings during session are scheduled now on the calendar. The current plan, though, is that those board meetings will be electronic only, and you can either video conference or call in. Historically, we've never had a quorum for any of those session meetings, and so at this point in time, the meetings will be focused on keeping you up to date on what's going on administratively and what's going on with session.
Okay, we'll move on to our last item, agenda items for future meetings. Mr. Nelson?
At this point in time, the only item that's been deferred to the upcoming interim is the one that you took action on today regarding the retirees returning to work. We'll work on gathering more information, not only on the expansion or possible expansion of use of retirees in management positions, but also use of retirees in line positions, see what kind of data can be gathered. The next interim is not a rate-setting year, so you will not be adopting contribution rates for the plan, and so the sort of those ongoing calendar issues. Wait a minute, do I have that wrong? Anyway, we will get that out, but off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember what actuarial issues. Actually, now that I think about it, it's ahead of time. So next year would be the year that you would adopt rates for the 17-19 biennium. The board has already adopted rates for the 17-19 biennium, so it would be a check-in to see if you wanted to change the rates that you have already adopted. We'll get all of that out to you ahead of time as far as what items are on. Usually the very first meeting after session, we kind of lay out the interim work plan for you. Lisa, remind me, is it the rates have to be adopted by July 31st? Okay, so if the yeah. Okay. So then that next year, then that probably at the July meeting would be the opportunity to discuss rates. And again, we'll give you a full update on that at the first meeting of the next interim, first full meeting.
Okay. Does anyone have any additional business, additional follow-up on anything from today? Okay. Well, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. We have to vote on the last motion, so all those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
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 All those opposed?
Have a great Christmas, everybody.
Thank you, Senator. You too.
I will.